I ended my engagement after my fiancée told me she needed a break. Not to rest, but to see if her ex still meant something to her. One sentence destroyed 4 years, one night turned our home into a stranger's house, and one decision mine erased everything we ever built. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just packed her things, sold the house she once called ours, and disappeared before she could decide whether I was still worth keeping. Funny thing is, the silence that followed hurt less than the way she made me wait. Now every time I drive past that lake where I proposed, I wonder, did she ever realize she was the one who taught me how to let go? Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say listening in the comments or tell me where you are. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. My name is Caden Rourke, and this isn't a story about revenge. It's about how losing someone you loved exposes the person you were always meant to become. If my story resonates with you, please hit subscribe. Not for me, but for every soul who's been left behind and chose to rise again. I'm Caden Rourke, 30, a project manager who lives by checklists and quiet routines in a small South Congress house that's in my name, the kind of place with a crooked porch light and a cat named Luna who sleeps like she owns the deed. A few weeks after our private engagement, at home pizza candle wax on the counter, an acoustic playlist humming like a heartbeat, I drove Marissa Vale out to Lake Travis at golden hour. The water held the sun like a coin. The breeze pressed the cedar scent against us. Somewhere downshore, a radio leaked an old country song. I'm not a grand gesture guy, but I believe in promises you can keep. I set a simple dinner on a blanket, slid the ring from my pocket, and watched her eyes fill. Yes, she said so fast it knocked the breath out of me. We talked about a small wedding by the lake, 40 people, olive and bee tones, a scrappy little acoustic band that knows when to get out of the way of vows. Later that night, back at the house, she leaned her head against my shoulder while I strummed 3 clumsy chords on a beat-up walnut guitar. One day she said, "A porch, a dog, and that song at sunset." We already have the porch, I told her, and we both laughed at the way our future felt, like it had stepped into the room and sat down with us. In the kitchen, I set the ring box near 2 stemless wine glasses. The metal caught the light and threw it onto the backsplash in a thin, trembling ribbon. I taped a handwritten wedding wish list to the fridge venue flowers music guest count, then pinned a Polaroid beside it from our very first coffee date at a creaky old spot far north of our usual haunts. Marissa teased that my lists were a love language. I teased that her flexibility kept me from turning into a spreadsheet in human form. At night, crickets clicked a soft metronome on the back steps, and the Austin skyline looked like a heap of pocket stars tipped onto their sides. The kind of peace that makes you believe you've finally graduated into your real life settled over the house. I told myself, this is what commitment feels like, the slow alignment of 2 calendars into one. The easy silence at the sink, the way your arm knows where the other person's shoulder will be without looking. Still, when I killed the lights and the ring's reflection went dark in the glass, a thought brushed me like a moth's wing. When everything shines this bright, you forget light can go out. The night air crossed the porch, and Luna's collar bell chimed in the quiet. The city glittered. I exhaled and let the future tuck itself in beside us, warm, close, certain. The light that night was so beautiful I forgot it could go out. 6 to 8 weeks after the engagement, the lake talk faded into emails and invoices, then into the kind of silence that doesn't feel restful. Mornings in the kitchen, I'd pour coffee and ask simple practical things. Did you pick your bridesmaids? Are we landing on roses or tulips? Are you leaning more olive than beige for the napkins? Later, Marissa would say soft but distant, I'm slammed trying to lock a color palette for a client. At first, I didn't push. Pre-wedding stress is real, and I've led enough projects to know timelines slip. Nights I'd find her on the couch under the warm throw phone, tilted away, the corner of her mouth bent in a smile so faint it might have been nothing. When I came into the room, she'd flip the phone and say, just a mood board, in the sing-song tone people use on babies and nervous dogs. I opened our wish list on the fridge and noticed it hadn't shifted in weeks. No venue circled, no flower vendor starred the band line, still a question mark. On my calendar, our site visit to a lakeside space had been bumped the hour before with one-word deadline. The Google invite came back with her response set to, maybe a yellow hesitation I'd never seen on anything that had to do with us. I told myself, be patient the same way I do when an API stalls or a stakeholder ghosts a milestone. Take your run over the Congress Bridge, feel the morning air in your lungs, and remember that not everything needs confrontation to be real. But patterns add up like dust on a shelf. A credit card statement slid from the mail stack and listed a cafe way up in the North Loop, the one quadrant of the city we rarely visit. A day later, while resetting our router because the Wi-Fi had started acting like it was on its own break, I clicked through connected devices and saw a name in the recent list that didn't belong to the little ecosystem of our lives, Pierce EOS. It meant nothing, and it meant too much. Pierce is a common enough last name. EOS could be camera gear, a client, a brand, or a joke. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't say a word. I wrote the time and date in the notes app I keep for grocery lists and guitar chords and the occasional line I don't want to forget. The following weekend I set a coffee on the counter and asked about bridesmaids again, gentler this time, giving her on-ramps to excitement. She nodded, said after this deck, then kissed my cheek and slipped out, leaving a faint citrus scent and an open tab on her laptop with a gradient sample that looked like dawn. That night, I took the wish list down to add venues we could tour, but all I did was hold the paper and notice the crease running through music. Our Pinterest board, once a living thing of lace and lights, had gone still. No new pins, no comments. A museum of momentum. Near midnight, when the house was quiet, I went to the porch and let Luna push her head into my palm. I tried to name what I was feeling, and the closest word was drift. Not a storm. Not a fight. Just a slow, nearly polite sliding apart. I told myself I'd choose peace over drama because peace keeps love alive. I told myself I'm the man who waits on the right things. I went to the fridge for water, and a corner of an envelope tucked behind the spice jar caught my eye. It was a refund notice addressed to Marissa from a wedding stylist we'd shortlisted. In the memo line, cancel by client. 3 days ago. I turned the paper over like it might have something else to say. On the dining table under a coaster, I found a printout of an email thread that ended with a line I felt in my molars. I'll confirm a new date once everything's clear. Everything in that sentence didn't sound like work. I didn't confront her. I stacked the papers in the junk drawer I keep ridiculous tidy and wiped the counter because my hands needed to perform a task they could finish. The next morning I ran longer than usual and watched the skyline kick awake, the bridge buzzing with cyclists, the river holding the sky. I practiced the story I wanted to believe over work, a reset, a surprise she was planning, and shelved the one that tasted metallic. That night, she laughed too quickly at something on her phone, then locked it. I asked what was funny and she said a client sent a meme about beige. I nodded, reached for the Polaroid on the fridge, and noticed the photo paper had curled at the corner like it was trying to peel itself free. I pressed it flat with the pad of my thumb and felt my chest mirror the shape. I've always preferred harmony to confrontation. It's how I've kept teams together and I thought love steady. But harmony without honesty is just quiet. I went to the bedroom and for the first time since we got engaged, closed the door between us. Somewhere beyond it, a notification pinged and stopped. In the router log, Pierce EOS had appeared 2 weeks ago. On the receipt, that North Loop Cafe had charged us twice this month. On my calendar, a handful of our wedding tasks had turned the same color as maybe. I didn't line those facts up out loud. I let them hover like lights you can see out of the corner of your eye, but not when you stare straight on. I'm good at waiting. I'm less good at pretending waiting is the same thing as trusting. I washed my face, turned off the lamp, and lay in the dark, counting my breaths as if a certain number could anchor the house back into place. Somewhere in the quiet, a small voice I didn't want to hear said this: sometimes the first betrayal is the one you commit against yourself when you can't bear to ask the question you already know the answer to. Saturday night in East Austin felt like every other gathering. Our friend group threw cheap beer, warm light, too many shoes at the door. Someone had dragged us all together for a birthday, the kind that becomes more about nostalgia than celebration. The music was low, the kitchen full of half-empty glasses, and for the first hour it was easy. Marissa was laughing again, the kind of laugh that used to make me forget the world outside the sound of it. She leaned against the counter beside me, her hand brushing mine, and for a moment I thought maybe we were fine, just tired, maybe a little worn down by work. Then someone pulled out their phone and said, "Let's do that TikTok game, the one where you answer personal questions without flinching." I wasn't thrilled, but nobody says no when the crowd's buzzing. The first few questions were harmless: favorite vacation, worst date, guilty pleasure. The laughter came easy until the phone turned toward her. If you could relive one relationship, our friend read aloud, which would it be? Marissa didn't even pause. Probably Logan, she said, and then smiled like she'd said something clever, not catastrophic. The laughter stopped mid-breath. You could feel the temperature drop without anyone touching the thermostat. My hand tightened around the bottle I was holding. I remember the condensation breaking loose and sliding down my wrist. Someone coughed. Someone else looked away. She tried to laugh it off. I just mean it was a big chapter, you know. Learned a lot about myself. Her voice wavered halfway through the sentence. The room filled with polite murmurs, half sympathy, half disbelief. I smiled, the kind that doesn't reach anywhere near the eyes, and said something like, "Guess college leaves a mark." The conversation moved on, but I could feel people watching us from the corners of their eyes, measuring my reaction, waiting for a punchline that never came. The drive home was short, but felt like an hour. The windshield reflected passing lights in rhythmic flashes. Each one felt like a silent accusation. "You know I was joking," she said, soft, rehearsed. Of course I answered, my voice calm enough to scare me. I tried to change the subject, talked about Eli's new job, about Luna scratching the couch again, but my palms stayed damp on the steering wheel. She hummed along with a song on the radio like the night hadn't cracked something wide open. Back at the house, she went straight to the bedroom, saying she was exhausted. I stood in the kitchen staring at the faint ring her wine glass had left on the counter. I opened the cupboard to grab a jacket to air out the smell of stale rain from earlier that day. And that's when I saw it, the white envelope tucked between a cookbook and a stack of takeout menus. The sender's name caught my eye first, beneath the olive, the floral company we'd paid a deposit to for the wedding. My name wasn't on it, just hers. I slid my thumb under the seal. Inside was a printed refund notice. "Cancel by client," the memo line read. Dated 3 days ago. A folded sheet behind it, an email printout, ended with her message, "I'll confirm a new date when everything's clear." Everything. The word hummed in my skull like a warning siren. It didn't mean deadlines or vendors. It meant us. I stood there under the kitchen light, reading the same line over and over until the letters blurred. I didn't confront her. I closed the envelope, pushed it back into the cabinet, and leaned on the counter. The refrigerator hummed behind me, steady and cold. In the corner of the living room sat her Vision of Us wedding journal, the one she'd decorated with dried petals and magazine clippings. It was half buried under a pile of sketch pads now. The bookmark sat halfway through a page labeled "Aisle Flowers." The Polaroid on the fridge had curled further at the edge, its magnet fallen to the tile like a period at the end of an unfinished sentence. I looked out at the city through the window. The skyline blinked in uneven patterns, the kind of light that feels like Morse code for a message you can't quite translate. I texted Eli, "You free tomorrow?" Then I set the phone down and let the dark house close in around me. For the first time, I felt like I was standing outside the story of my own life, watching someone else play my part. The city lights flickered cold and restless, and I realized I didn't recognize their warmth anymore. The next evening, rain came early, thin and persistent, tapping against the windows like a reminder. I came home before sunset, the sky still gray, the smell of wet asphalt following me into the hall. The house felt wrong the second I opened the door. No music, no kettle, no Luna waiting near the counter. Marissa sat on the couch with her laptop open, but her hand's idle screen glow soft on her face. "You okay?" I asked, setting my keys down. She didn't look up. "We need to talk." Those 4 words always sound the same, no matter who says them. The pause after them is the real killer. I sat across from her, the air so thick with unspoken things that even breathing felt intrusive. "I've been thinking," she said, twisting the ring on her finger. "About us. About everything." That word again. Everything. "I think I need a break." I thought I'd misheard her. A break, just some space. To make sure I'm not making a mistake. Her voice trembled, but her expression didn't. "I've been talking to Logan again. I just need to know if there's anything left there before I move forward with you." There are moments when silence weighs more than words. I stared at her, my heartbeat steady only because it had nowhere else to go. So you want a break? I said slowly to see if your ex still does it for you. It's not like that, she said too fast. I need clarity. I owe it to myself to be sure before we get married. And what do I do while you find your clarity? She hesitated. I guess you take time too. To think about us. I laughed once quietly. You want to go date someone else and I'm supposed to sit here and reflect. She folded her arms, defensive now. It's not about you doing something wrong. This is about me figuring out what I need. Her tone was soft, practiced, and detached, the way you speak to someone you've already decided to leave but don't want to feel guilty about it. You know, I said, standing up, you could have just said you were done. I'm not, she insisted. I just need to test drive regret. She winced. I could see her searching for the right combination of words to make this sound reasonable human. I just don't want to spend my life wondering what if. Then go find out, I said. She blinked, startled by how calm I sounded. You're not mad, I'm tired, I answered. There's a difference. I walked to the kitchen, pulled a glass from the cabinet, filled it halfway, and drank. The house creaked with the kind of quiet that follows breaking points. When I turned back, she was standing in the doorway, small and uncertain. I'm not asking forever, she said. Just a little time. You can have all the time you want, I said, setting the glass down. I'll use mine to clean up my life. Her eyes searched mine, trying to gauge if I meant it. I did. She went to the bedroom, started pulling clothes from drawers, the zipper of her suitcase rasping through the silence. The sound felt final, mechanical, like nails sealing a crate. I stayed in the living room, hands on the back of the couch, watching the reflection of her shadow move across the hallway wall. When she walked past me again, she smelled like lavender and rain. I'll stay at my mom's for a while, she murmured. This isn't goodbye. Sure, I said. She paused at the door, waiting for me to say something else, something that would make this reversible. I didn't. The door clicked shut, muffled by the rain. For a while, I just stood there. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. Her laptop was still open on the couch, the chat window minimized but not closed. When I moved the cursor, a name popped up in the corner, Logan P. The last message was a smile emoji. Next to it, the candle from our engagement dinner burned low, the wax melting down the side in a long, uneven streak that looked like a tear frozen mid-fall. The engagement ring sat in its box on the coffee table, never worn, still shining like it didn't know better. I turned to head upstairs and noticed a slip of paper on the counter by her keys, a folded hotel receipt dated 2 days ago. North Loop. Guest M. Vale. 2 occupants. I didn't explode. Didn't throw anything. I just folded the receipt neatly and put it in the top drawer beside the corkscrew. The mind does strange things when it's done being shocked. It goes quiet. I sat down on the couch, felt the cushion still warm where she'd been sitting. The cat jumped onto my lap, confused by the stillness. I stroked her fur and listened to the rain harden outside. It was the first time I realized the sound of water could feel like silence. I don't remember when I decided, only that by the time the candle burned out, I'd already made peace with what came next. I wasn't going to beg her to stay. I wasn't going to wait for her to decide my worth. If she needed to test someone else to understand me, then she'd learn her lesson elsewhere. When she came back, our house would be gone, and I would be gone with it. A week after Marissa left, Austin slipped into that thin season between fall and winter where the air turns crisp but the sky can't decide on a color. The house felt less like a home and more like a stage set after the actors have gone, the props still waiting for someone to come back and finish the scene. I kept my routines, the gym, the office, the polite nods to the barista who knew my name, but underneath something was shifting. Every minute now belonged to a quiet plan. Eli showed up one evening with a pizza box and that look only best friends have, the one that says they're here to help, but also to call you out. We sat on the floor of the living room because the couch still smelled like her perfume. So he said through a mouthful, "You're just going to wait around, hope she figures it out." I looked at the empty wall where our photos used to hang. "No," I said. "I'm not waiting. I'm disappearing." He nodded once, no surprise in his face, and slid me a beer. "Good. Then let's start." The next morning I called a real estate agent. She showed up the following day in heels too sharp for our creaky porch, walking through each room with the kind of efficiency that leaves no room for memories. "It's a good market," she said. "You'll get offers fast." I signed the paperwork without hesitation. The house was in my name. That mattered now. The pen scratched the paper, and with each signature, I felt a little less like a man abandoned and more like one walking himself out of the fire. I spent that weekend boxing up Marissa's things, her clothes, the framed sketches she'd made, the little signs she'd hung that said, "Love lives here." I folded them carefully, not out of sentiment but out of habit. When I was done, I hired a moving service to take everything to her mother's house. I wrote a note on top of the last box, "Good luck with Logan." The rooms emptied fast. The echo of my footsteps replaced her music, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. Each drawer I cleared out was a confession I'd been holding too long. When I tossed the last of her floral throw pillows into the donation pile, it felt like breathing after weeks underwater. That night I scrolled through social media out of instinct and saw her latest post, a selfie in soft light captioned, "Finding myself again." Logan had commented underneath, "Glad you did." My thumb hovered over the screen, but I didn't engage. I just locked the phone and opened my laptop. In a single sitting, I filled out the application for a project manager opening at my company's Portland branch, the one I'd always been too cautious to pursue. I didn't reread it. I just hit send. Eli texted later, checking in. I wrote back, "When she realizes I'm gone, I want her to find nothing left to come back to." 3 days later, the realtor called. "We already have a serious buyer," she said. "They'll pay above asking." I didn't even need to think. Sell it. That Saturday night, my phone buzzed again. Marissa's name. "Hey, just wanted to know if you're okay. I don't want you to be mad." I stared at the screen until it went dark. I didn't answer. The next morning, another message came. "Are you selling the house? Mom said someone came by to measure the rooms." I replied simply, "Yes. I'm getting ready to leave." An hour later, my phone rang. I let it vibrate against the counter until it stopped. I sat by the window that night, the one facing the skyline, where the lights of the city blinked like small promises you don't intend to keep. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel anger or heartbreak. I felt awake. The air through the cracked window smelled like cedar and rain. The cat jumped onto the sill and pressed against my arm. I whispered, "You're coming with me." Marissa had asked for space to find herself. I was giving her that and taking my life back in the process. She wanted time. I'd give her forever. Because by the time she found what she was looking for, I'd already be gone. By the end of the month, everything was in motion. The sale of the house was nearly final, and the HR manager from Portland called to say, "Congratulations, Caden. We'd love to have you." The offer letter landed in my inbox, and for the first time in months I smiled without feeling guilty about it. My start date was set for 5 weeks out. The timing was perfect. Meanwhile, Marissa had begun curating a public version of her healing. Every few days she posted something poetic, close-ups of coffee cups, sunlit windows, captions like, "Growth is painful but necessary." Her followers cheered her on. I didn't feel bitterness anymore. Mostly, I felt detached, like watching a movie I'd already seen the ending of. Then one night, while I was packing a box of books, a friend texted me a screenshot, Logan and Marissa smiling over lattes at a cafe in North Loop. Our cafe. The one from that first Polaroid on the fridge. The caption read, "Sometimes old paths still lead somewhere new." I stared at it for a long moment, not because it hurt, but because of how small it all suddenly looked. A few mutual friends reached out. "Man, have you seen that photo? You okay?" I told them all the same thing, I wish them well. And I meant it. A few days later, Sarah, one of Marissa's contacts in the design world, asked to meet for coffee. She was sharp kind, the type who noticed everything but only spoke half of it. "She's telling people it's just a temporary break," Sarah said quietly. "That you're working on yourselves separately before the wedding." I stirred my coffee, watching the swirl fade. "We're not on a break," I said. "She is. I'm done." Sarah nodded, understanding flickering across her face. "Word gets around fast. Some of her clients have already pulled projects. People respect consistency. You know, I didn't say anything, but a strange peace settled in me. I hadn't lifted a finger to expose her. I didn't need to. Truth was its own gravity, it always finds its level. A week later, another message appeared in my inbox. This time it was from someone I didn't recognize at first, an old acquaintance from college. Attached was a photo Logan again, this time with another woman at a bar in Hyde Park. The timestamp lined up with the week Marissa had posted her finding herself update. I closed the message without replying. By the end of that weekend, Marissa had deleted every picture of them together from her page. The next Friday it was raining again. I just finished a call with the Portland office when there was a knock at the door of my temporary workspace. I looked up, and there she was, Marissa. Her hair clung to her face, her coat soaked through mascara, faint at the corners of her eyes. For a moment neither of us spoke. "He did it again," she said finally. "Logan. He cheated on me." I leaned back in my chair, hands folded. She took a step closer, voice shaking. "I made a mistake. I was scared. I thought I needed to know what else was out there, but I was wrong. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I studied her, searching for any trace of the person I used to know. "You don't miss me," I said quietly. "You just miss having someone who cared enough to stay." She reached for my hand. "We can fix this. I'll go to therapy, I'll prove it to you." I shook my head. "You already did prove it. I know exactly who you are now, and that's enough." Tears welled in her eyes. She turned and left without another word. Through the glass, I watched her hurry down the steps into the rain, her figure shrinking until the streetlight swallowed her. I expected satisfaction, maybe even relief sharp enough to feel like triumph. What came instead was stillness, a clean, empty quiet. I realized I didn't need revenge or closure or explanations. I'd already won the moment I stopped needing her to lose. That night the realtor called to confirm the sale had closed. The last legal tie to my old life was gone. I drove to the house one final time, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The walls were bare now, faint outlines where the picture frames used to hang. The echo of my footsteps sounded like someone else's life. I stood in the center of the room, the smell of paint and dust mixing with the cold air. I thought about how easily love can turn into something fragile like glass, beautiful until you realize how thin it is. No one can make you small, I realized, unless you let them. I locked the door behind me. The sound of the latch clicked clean and final. Outside, the rain eased into a mist. I didn't look back. The house had been hers long before it stopped being mine, and I was finally ready to let the reflection go. Morning rain stitched a thin gray veil over the roof, and I woke to the sound of it tapping the tin like patient fingers. The house smelled like old paint and damp drywall, the kind of scent that tells you endings have a texture. I moved through the empty rooms, quietly sealing the last boxes with blue painter's tape, leaving one small stack on the counter, a single wine glass, the ring box, and a Polaroid of two people grinning at Lake Travis like nothing could touch them. I slid the photo from its frame, put it in a manila envelope I'd labeled in black marker "What I Learned," and felt the weight change from memory to lesson. I pocketed the envelope and set the house keys dead center on the bare kitchen island, metal on stone, final enough to echo. At the bank, the fluorescent lights flattened everything, the pen, the papers, my name hitched beside the buyer's in tidy type. I initialed, signed, dated. Each stroke cut a clean seam between who I'd been and who I was about to be. When the notary stamped the last page, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath since the night she asked for space. The clerk thanked me. I set it back and meant it for the whole day. I drove home one last time through streets that had drawn my life's map for 4 years. The porch light burned in daylight, stubborn as habit. A sedan I didn't recognize idled at the curb. Marissa stood in the rain without an umbrella, hair plastered to her cheek, a white envelope in her hand. I killed the engine and stepped out, the cold collecting in my collar. "I just wanted to say one last thing," she said. "I'm sorry." I know, I answered. "But sorry doesn't walk the miles I already did alone." She held the envelope out. "It's an explanation." "I don't need reasons," I said. "I need an ending." Her eyes shone rain or tears or both. "You always said you don't quit." I'm not quitting, I told her steady. I'm winning differently. For a moment, we stood with the city noise running around us like a river. She looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I finally saw the space between us for what it was. I got in the truck and turned the key. In the rear view, she shrank into a blur of gray and white, a figure dissolving into weather. The wipers dragged a clean arc across the windshield. On the frontage road, my phone buzzed on the seat. An email preview lit up from Logan. Didn't want to cause trouble, but she'd been talking to me months before she asked for a break. Thought you should know. I let the message fade. The engine's hum braided with the rain until both sounded like a single steady thing. I know I said aloud to the empty cab to the road, and it doesn't matter anymore. The green sign rose ahead, leaving Austin city limit, and something inside me loosened like a knot finally given permission to untie. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of circling back to the smaller version of myself who would have waited. Past the sign, the highway widened, and so did my breathing. I didn't take the ring box, the bouquet mock-ups, or the playlist we built for a wedding that wouldn't happen. I took the envelope my cat carrier on the passenger side floor, a duffel of clothes, and the part of me she'd made too easy to ignore. The rest could stay. The rain tapered to mist. The sky stayed the color of a new page. I drove until the city was a rumor, until the rear view held nothing but road. I had nothing left I couldn't carry, and for the first time in too long I was carrying myself. Spring in Portland doesn't arrive so much as seep in. 3 months after I left Austin, the air along the Willamette had that wet coffee smell I've come to love, and my mornings started with fog lifting like it had somewhere better to be. Atlas Grid welcomed me like I'd always belonged there. Tight cruise ideas over gossip people who talked about what could be built instead of what had broken them. On day 1, someone handed me a security badge and a joke about raincoats. On day 10, I caught myself laughing in a way that didn't feel borrowed. I found a high-floor apartment with a river view and a balcony barely big enough for a chair and a guitar. The first morning there, the gray light pushed through the curtains like a gentle insistence, keep going. I adopted a shelter mutt with a chess piece face and called him Rook because forward was the only direction that made sense. We walked the waterfront before work, and in the evenings I learned the chalk and rope language of a small climbing gym, left my phone in a locker, and watched my focus swap from gaps in a relationship to holds on a wall. On weekends I strummed old chords back into my hands and signed up to volunteer at a dog rescue where the air smelled like bleach and hope. One afternoon, a message lit my phone from a number I didn't save but recognized. Her sister. She's staying with our parents in Dallas. Things didn't go how she thought. He's gone. Work's slow. I typed and erased 3 versions of a response before sending the only one I could stand behind. Thank you. I wish her peace. Nights the apartment hummed quietly. I kept the envelope on a bookshelf between a dog-eared novel and a field guide to Pacific Northwest trails. Some lessons you keep close, not to reopen the wound, but to remember where you stopped bleeding. An email arrived a week later from Marissa herself. Subject line: "You can't erase me like that." The body was long familiar in its rhythms. 4 years can't just be a memory. I know I was wrong. I still believe somewhere you remember me the way I remember you. I read it at the kitchen counter with the kettle starting to sing, then typed back slow. You're right. I remember, but not the way you want. I remember, so I won't forget how easily I used to forgive. Thank you for the lesson. I clicked send and watched the confirmation pop, as small and final as a period. That evening, Sam from my new team asked if I wanted to climb after work. On the walk back through wet streets, she said, "People think losing someone is the end of the story. Sometimes it's the turn that gets you pointed the right way." I smiled. I didn't lose anyone, I said. I found the person I'd misplaced. A mutual friend texted me a link the following week. Marissa had posted that she was relaunching her design work that she was rebuilding. The comments were a mess, split between cheerleaders and people who couldn't let the past stay quiet. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt older in a good way. Time doesn't punish, it balances. We all meet ourselves eventually,